It's a major risk health experts are warning against.
Rang des théâtres en tant que spectateur et sentir, par exemple, Isabelle Huppert, qui est une actrice que j'aime énormément,
C'est symbolique, mais on a envie de tracer notre peau avec une odeur pour pouvoir tracer notre odeur sur quelqu'un d'autre. En fait, c'est l'envie de l'amour.
Finalement, le parfum, il est toujours entre soi et l'être aimé.
Чего не сделаешь ради демонстрации закона сохранения момента импульса. Я влез на стул.
Что-то работа не та, и семья не та, или жизнь не та. А может, я не тот. Вот.
Your hands will start shaking, your heart will start going faster. You get sweaty, your eyes water, your skin flushes, the mucous membranes run, and so you get snot pouring out your nose.
Ed Curry is the evil genius who brought the world the Carolina Reaper, the world's hottest hot pepper.
A Carolina Reaper is a beautiful fruit that is hiding a package of evil inside, and it's the hottest pepper in the world. I get to hurt people from all over the world every single day. I might have a little sadistic streak to me.
The aptly named Curry has been hyper-focused on one thing since 1981, hot peppers. More specifically, he's obsessed with crossbreeding different peppers to make them as hot as possible by upping their level of capsaicin, the ingredient that gives hot peppers their heat. And the Carolina Reaper is an absolute capsaicin beast.
I made the Carolina Reaper by breeding a pepper I got from a doctor from Pakistan with a pepper I got from a coworker at the bank from the island of St. Vincent. I was just trying to raise capsaicinoid levels in the naga that I got from Pakistan to see if I could get one of the subcapsaicinoids to go higher. And we got the Carolina Reaper. It was a gift from God.
In 2013, Curry's favorite pepper was officially crowned the spiciest in the world by the Guinness Book of World Records. But how spicy is that?
Everybody knows what a jalapeno is. They run between 3,000 and 5,000 Scoville heat units. Thai chili is maybe 20,000 Scoville. Habaneros, on average, maybe 100,000. Then you get into ghost peppers, they're really about 600,000. And then you got the Carolina Reaper coming in at 1.642 million Scoville heat units on average, with coming in. Then you get into ghost peppers, they're really about 600,000. And then you got the Carolina Reaper coming in at 1.642 million Scoville heat units on average, with a peak heat of 2.5 million Scoville units. We're talking roller skates to space shuttle, you know?
Now, remember that peppers are organic things with lots of variation, including spice and size. For example, jalapenos tend to range from 3,000 to 8,000 or more Scoville heat units, and are generally twice as big as a Reaper, which themselves range from 1.5 million to 2.5 million. And heat is a subjective thing, but still, let's try to put it all in perspective. Roughly 10 spicy habaneros hold the same amount of capsaicin as one Reaper. You'd need about 60 serranos to match a Carolina Reaper. And it'd take 600 jalapenos, give or take a couple hundred, to match the amount of capsaicin in one mild, equivalently sized Carolina Reaper.
Carolina Reaper does not do the same thing to me anymore because my body is used to it. So I need something hotter. Me anymore because my body is used to it. So I need something hotter. Oh, that's so good.
Curry has bred almost 500 distinct pepper plants, constantly trying to push the level of heat one pepper can hold, and he's not finished.
Yeah, we're still breeding peppers that are hotter and hotter and hotter. I used to think that about 4.3 million was the hottest you can get a pepper. I've already proven myself wrong, and science has now proven that we can get a lot hotter than that.
While the Carolina Reaper still holds the Guinness World Record, Curry says his Pepper X is even hotter. It's the main ingredient in this fiery hot sauce, the hottest in the hit YouTube series Hot Ones. To create new super hot peppers, Curry uses a pretty straightforward crossbreeding technique, interbreeding two different pepper plants, hoping to combine attractive traits into a brand new plant. It's the same method humans use to turn a gray wolf into the Chihuahua, the Bulldog, and even the Poodle, except plants need a little more help.
It's a 50-50 crapshoot, but we look for a really nice flower, and we use these paint brushes to go around the flower and pull the pollen out. And then when you have enough of the pollen, you go to the female and you paint that pollen onto the flowers. And then you do this
A brand new plant. It's the same method humans use to turn a gray wolf into the Chihuahua, the Bulldog, and even the Poodle, except plants need a little more help.
It's a 50-50 crapshoot, but we look for a really nice flower, and we use these paint brushes to go around the flower and pull the pollen out. And then when you have enough of the pollen, you go to the female and you paint that pollen onto the flowers. And then you do this process over and over and over again.
When I was 35 years of age, many years ago, I was homeless. I was sitting around on various steps around the streets, and I remember once I was sitting down eating a piece of bread, I actually had 2 pieces of bread, one for that day, the other piece for the next day. I didn't have anything for the day after tomorrow. Well, while I was sitting there, this man in a suit came to sit beside me, told me he'd just lost his job, and asked me if he could borrow $1 to take the bus home. Well, actually, I didn't think that much about it. I took out 5 $1 notes that I had in my pocket. I gave him $1 and continued eating my piece of bread. He then told me that he was hungry. He asked me for a piece of my bread. Well, I told him that piece was the only bread I had. Well, he went away with my $1. I put the 4 remaining dollars back into my pocket. As he walked away, he thanked me. He told me that my kindness would one day be rewarded. Well, you know, the next day, the man came back, looking for me, and gave me a mysterious package. Inside, an odd-looking bracelet in it. There was a note in the package. It said, "Thank you for your kindness. Wear this for good luck." Well, I put on the odd-looking bracelet and, a strange electrical sensation shot through my body. I couldn't explain the exact feeling of it, but I felt positive. I felt powerful. It looked good on me. I decided just to wear it to see what happened. So a few days later, I was walking along the same street. I found a lottery ticket that turned out to be a winning ticket. Well, several weeks later, I used the money from the lottery ticket to start a small business. Guess what? A few months later,
It takes patience to create a new breed. A lot of patience. Plants in the first generation tend to carry a lot of their parents' traits. Breeders can start to tease out specific traits in the subsequent generations through selective breeding. It generally takes about 8 to 10 generations to stabilize a hybridization and get predictable traits and consistent fruit.
If we get desirable traits like high-end
Patience. Plants in the first generation tend to carry a lot of their parents' traits. Breeders can start to tease out specific traits in the subsequent generations through selective breeding. It generally takes about 8 to 10 generations to stabilize a hybridization and get predictable traits and consistent fruit.
If we get desirable traits like high indices of any of the capsinoids we're looking for, then we'll keep on going on the cross. If it doesn't work, then we got to start all over again. And it's a very time-consuming, very long process.
Curry grew up gardening, so this level of botanical knowledge is second nature to him.
My mother was a master gardener, and she taught me how to breed plants and irises, lilies, different things up in Michigan. So that's where I literally got that, and I took it to the dope level. I started trying to crossbreed pot when I was younger, and it was dangerous.
So he decided to grow something else and landed on super hot peppers, like the Carolina Reaper.
I was on a search for hotter things than I could get, and this was a Vietnamese restaurant that specialized in spicy food, and I asked them to make it the hottest they could, and they said, no, and I said, yeah. And when I ate it, I got a rush. I literally got a rush like I was taking some dope.
Curry has been sober for over 20 years now, but he says that a natural high has kept him going, producing and eating.
I literally got a rush like I was taking some dope.
Curry has been sober for over 20 years now, but he says that a natural high has kept him going, producing and eating hotter and hotter peppers.
When I first ate the Reaper, it knocked me to my knees. I was like 3 years clean. I hadn't felt that feeling in a long time. I knew that was hot. You get this like euphoric feeling, and that's your body trying to overtake the pain that the chemical reaction is giving you. And eventually, the endorphin rush overtakes the pain, and when you get into the higher pain, you get the more pleasure. So it's just chasing the dragon.
As Curry's tolerance grew and grew, his pepper growing hobby ballooned into a full-on, all-encompassing lifestyle.
When I met my wife, she wouldn't have anything to do with me. She called me a funny little man. When I asked for a number, she said, not a chance in hell, But I heard she liked salsa, and I was growing tomatoes and peppers and stuff. So I whipped up some peach mango salsa, and she talked to me. We got married 9 months later. So I put like 1,400 plants in her backyard, and we were making hot sauce and salsa with what we weren't using, in breeding.
And that salsa won her over. She convinced him to start selling his sauces instead of giving them away. So he started Pucker Butt Pepper Company. And in 2012, he quit his high-paying job in banking to dive headfirst into spicy peppers.
Approximately 4 a.m. every morning, I start sorting through those peppers to sort for grade, to sort for color, and I separate them into the mashed peppers, the seeding peppers, the ones I want to eat, and the ones we're going to dry.
Curry grows peppers. He makes hot sauce. He makes salsa. He makes mash and mustard. He dries the whole fruit and makes beef jerky. And he even saves the seeds.
Last count, I think there was 3,800 seeds in my office, different types. And we've got more stashed all over the place. I think we're around 7,000 seeds, different types of seeds. Some of those are going to be for sale to the public. Some of them will never be to sale to the public. Some go to the medical community. And some are just because I'm an addict and I can't stop, I can't stop collecting them.
But capsaicin is a strong, strong irritant to our skin, eyes, and lungs. And there's so much of it in reapers that caution is needed while handling them.
When people are seeding, they wear double gloves because the oil inside the peppers will actually eat through nitrile gloves. But that's not because they're protecting their hands. My hands are on fire all the time. That's because they're protecting the soft parts of their body. They take their gloves off before they go to the bathroom. See where I was touching those peppers earlier is on fire right now. The air is actually spicy.
For more than 100 years, peppers have been measured using the Scoville scale. It was started by Wilbur Scoville in 1912. Originally, the level of spice was determined by 5 individual taste testers. But today, the level of heat is measured in a lab, and so Curry knows exactly how dangerous his peppers are.
It was subjective then. Now it's analytical. Everybody uses the same process. No one's tastes are involved. If you put my wife and had her eat a Reaper, she would tell you it's 10 million Scoville. If you have me eat it, I'll say, it's 100,000. That's subjective. The machine doesn't lie. It measures everything the same way.
Curry works with a local chemist to find out exactly how much capsaicin is packed into his peppers.
We grind those peppers and emulsify them, and then we pump them through a machine called an HPLC, a high-performance liquid chromatograph. And that measures the different properties that are in a pepper. You can go for the tannins, capsaicinoids, flavonoids, coloring agents, whatever you want to do. We analyze all of it. There's a very specific math equation that you put the area of the peaks in to come up with the Scoville heat units.
All this obsession with heat might seem crazy, but it couldn't come at a better time. America's appetite for spice is getting bigger and bigger every year. The U.S. hot sauce industry saw 150% growth from 2000 to 2014, with steady increases since then. Today, it's a $1.5 billion industry in the United States.
I believe it's because the changing demographic of America, they brought with them food that we never had before. I mean, when I was growing up, there were no Thai restaurants, there were no African restaurants, Caribbean restaurants, Indian restaurants. But as the demographic of America changed, they brought in their food cultures, and we got exposed to that.
And then there's the internet, where people post painful videos of themselves eating peppers constantly.
Hot sauce is now a mainstream thing. People are always doing some crazy stunt with it. This didn't happen 10 years ago. For those of you out there that want to eat a whole Carolina Reaper, I highly recommend that you do not do it.
Despite these warnings, business is good, and Curry gets to spend most of his days surrounded by what he loves the most.
I get out of bed at 3:30 in the morning just to go and play with peppers, and I stay there all day long on fire, eating them all day long. This is my happy place.
Увеличить количество клиентов можно в несколько кликов. Скопируйте настройки контекстной рекламы с одной платформы на другую вместе с телепортом в Google рекламу.
Чего не сделаешь ради демонстрации закона сохранения момента импульса. Я влез на стул вместе с велосипедным колесом, а стул стоит на платформе, которая может достаточно свободно поворачиваться вокруг вертикальной оси. Но сейчас оба тела, и велосипедное колесо, и я, неподвижны. Момент импульса равен нулю. Я раскручу колесо вокруг горизонтальной оси. Проекция момента импульса на вертикальную ось останется равной нулю. А теперь подниму колесо. И опущу колесо. Когда я его поднимаю, растет проекция момента импульса на вертикальную ось. А она хочет оставаться постоянной, то есть равной нулю в силу закона сохранения момента. Ну, поэтому я поворачиваюсь. Чтобы это было лучше видно, надо увеличить скорость вращения колеса.
Хотите комплексно восстановить свои суставы и позвоночник? Я готов поделиться пошаговым планом, в котором вы узнаете, как людям старше 45 лет восстановить свои.
Что-то работа не та, и семья не та, или жизнь не та. А может, я не тот? Вот вопрос.
This is the new norm for the entire society, for the whole of Sweden. Don't go to gyms, don't go to libraries, don't host dinners, don't have parties, cancel.
Pretty emphatic stuff from Sweden's Prime Minister there, announcing strict new ways to behave as a powerful second wave of COVID-19 hits his country. But he was quick to point out that he does not believe in a total lockdown. So what gives? Well, you'll know from watching our show that Sweden has taken a very different approach to pretty much everywhere else when it comes to lockdowns. That so-called Swedish model shuns state controls and instead emphasises the role of the individual to do what's right. But that's not such a clear-cut solution, it seems. The number of people who have died there far, far higher than in neighbouring countries, all of which had tougher measures. So how good could that Swedish model really be? Let's connect you to what's really going on with CNN's Phil Black in what looks like a very cold Stockholm for us this evening. What's the story there, Phil?
Well, Becky, the frontline doctors that we've been talking to here have expressed a lot of frustration, really, because they believe this country is now deep into a second wave, which they feel could have been largely avoided had tougher action been taken sooner. But of course, Sweden is famous for Not being forceful with the coronavirus, relying instead on recommendations to the public. But the concern is that advice isn't being followed. And so, as you've touched on, the Swedish government is now changing its messaging. It is now much more urgent in the advice that it is giving people in terms of what they should and shouldn't do. The concern, though, is that this tougher line, these tougher measures, they're simply coming too late. A gym in central Stockholm. Sweden's government says this is dangerous, but it won't shut them down. Those working hard at this socially distanced class don't want to stop.
Workout for me, it's all I got right now. So I need to do this as long as I can, and for all the members as well, they are so happy that we're still doing it.
Perhaps they'd feel differently if they saw this. Uppsala Hospital, the ICU. A ventilated patient is being prepped for helicopter transfer to another facility with more free beds. Are you surprised that you're already having to juggle capacity?
Not surprised, no. That we expected.
After a quiet summer, the coronavirus is again surging in Sweden. This isn't like the spring peak. It's nowhere near as intense yet, but it feels to the staff here so familiar. They are tired and frustrated because there is a sense that this could have been avoided. A powerful second wave hasn't changed the essence of Sweden's distinctive approach to slowing the spread. Still, no forced lockdown, few rules, mostly just advice on social distancing with an emphasis on personal responsibility. On the front line, they say it's not enough.
We need to put some, consequences for not doing these things.
Enforcement.
Yeah, enforcement.
Sweden's official list of recommended behaviour is tougher now. It reads more like a voluntary lockdown, discouraging all non-essential mixing.
Can you hear me?
But Anders Tegnell, the architect of Sweden's approach, admits too many aren't following his advice. So that's the key difference. Your recommendations aren't enforceable.
So far, during the spring, this worked really well. We managed to get people to stop meeting each other to a great extent. If we can get back to that level of follow-up.
Yes. Make him look angry. Tegnell is lionized here.
He has been our national hero in this crisis. He put out guidelines that have kept our freedom.
There's broad support for the country's policies, even though officials admit Sweden failed its elderly. Almost 90% of people who've died so far were over 70. And Sweden's total death toll is more than 4 times the combined figure of its Nordic neighbours, all of which embraced tougher measures. Hello.
Welcome.
But even among the sick, you meet advocates for prioritizing freedom. Anders Eidsvik knows the suffering COVID-19 can cause.
It shouldn't be too easy to close down the society, I believe.
Sweden is sticking with a model that relies on consent instead of legal force, but it's now asking people to voluntarily give up more than ever before, and it's not yet clear they're willing to do it. Becky, the Swedish model is often associated with the concept of herd immunity, the idea that if you let it run enough in the community and the population, that a natural immunity builds up to the point that it will eventually stop the spread. The officials here say that was never the goal, but they did hope that greater exposure would result in enough immunity in the population to at least slow down that spread somewhat. They now say there is simply no evidence to suggest that is happening during this new wave. Becky.
Я хочу пригласить Максима Роговцева, совокупно более 20 миллионов подписчиков.
Ничего не было совершенно.
Все, что я делал, у меня не получалось. Я не мог заработать денег и принести их домой. Мы не понимаем.
Dear fellow scholars, this is 2-minute papers with Dr. Károly Zsolnai Fehér. The promise of virtual reality, VR, is indeed truly incredible. If one day it comes to fruition, doctors could be trained to perform surgery in a virtual environment, we could train better pilots with better flight simulators, expose astronauts to virtual zero-gravity simulations, you name it. An important part of doing many of these is simulating walking in a virtual environment. You see, we can be located in a small room, put on a VR headset and enter a wonderful, expensive virtual world. However, as we start walking, we immediately experience a big problem. What is that problem? Well, we bump into things. As a remedy, we could make our virtual world smaller, but that would defeat the purpose. This earlier technique addresses this walking problem spectacularly by redirection. So, what is this redirection thing exactly? Redirection is a simple concept that changes our movement in the virtual world so it deviates from our real path in the room in a way that both lets us explore the virtual world and not bump into walls and objects in reality in the meantime. Here you can see how the blue and orange lines deviate, which means that the algorithm is at work. With this, we can wander about in a huge and majestic virtual landscape or a cramped bar, even when being confined to a small physical room. Loving the idea. But there is more to interacting with virtual worlds than walking. For instance, look at this tech demo that requires more precise hand movements. How do we perform these? Well, the key is here, controllers. Clearly they work, but can we get rid of them? Can we just opt for a more natural solution and use our hands instead? Well, hold on to your papers, because this new work uses a learning-based algorithm to teach a head-mounted camera to tell the orientation of our hands at all times. Of course, the quality of the execution matters a great deal, so we have to ensure at least 3 things. One is that the hand tracking happens with minimal latency, which means that we see our actions immediately with minimal delay. 2. We need low jitter, which means that the key points of the reconstructed hand should not change too much from frame to frame. This happens a great deal with previous methods. And what about the new one? Deal with that hand should not change too much from frame to frame. This happens a great deal with previous methods. And what about the new one? Oh yes, much smoother. Checkmark. Note that the new method also remembers the history of the hand movement and therefore can deal with difficult occlusion situations. For instance, look at the pinky here. A previous technique would not know what's going on with it, but this new one knows exactly what is going on because it has information on what the hand was doing a moment ago. And 3, this needs to work in all kinds of lighting conditions. Let's see if it can reconstruct a range of mythical creatures in poor lighting conditions. Yes, these ducks are reconstructed just as well as the mighty poke monster and these scissors too. Bravo! So, what can we do with it? Just as well as the mighty poke monster and these scissors too. Bravo! So, what can we do with this? A great deal. For instance, we can type on a virtual keyboard or implement all kinds of virtual user interfaces that we can interact with. We can also organize imaginary boxes. And of course, we can't leave out the 2-minute paper's favorite, going into a physics simulation and playing with it. But of course, not everything is perfect here. Look, hand-hand interactions don't work so well, so folks who prefer virtual reality applications that include washing our hands should look elsewhere. But of course, one step at a time. This episode has been supported by Lambda GPU Cloud. If you're looking for inexpensive cloud GPUs for AI, check out Lambda GPU Cloud. They've recently...
Хотите узнать, как Настя из Краснодара в 5 лет заработала на YouTube 18 миллионов?
So let's do can versus should versus will. First, do you believe the efficacy numbers hold? I am told that they are interim data, early data. This is a compressed process. First of all, bravo on Operation Warp Speed. Bravo to the Trump administration, to you and all the people who worked on it. It was worth the risk of putting that money up front to see if you lost it, you lost it, you didn't. Bravo. But do you think those numbers hold?
Yes. I've seen the numbers. They're going to hold because you look at all the people in the study and what it was. I mean, you had a situation in the Pfizer study. You had 4 versus 90, 5 versus 90. That's a 95% effective. Those numbers are not going to change. The issue is how long does the immunity last? How long does protection last? We don't know that right now, but we know it works.
Okay.
That's for sure, I can tell you.
What about this question that was given to me by clinicians? Okay, we know that if you take the vaccine, you don't get as sick, but we don't know for sure that you can't be infected. I said, what's the difference? They said, well, you could still have the virus and be contagious, but you won't feel the same way. Is that true?
Right. Right, the primary endpoint of the vaccine was clinically recognizable disease, symptomatic disease. The secondary endpoints were severe disease and infection. Does it protect against infection? The data that came out indicated that of the people with the primary endpoint, clearly it was 94, 95% effective. We know also that it prevents severe disease, because if you look at the severe disease in the Pfizer study, the severe disease was 1 in the vaccine group and 9 in the placebo group. In the Moderna study, it was 0 in the vaccine group, 11 in the placebo group. So clearly it prevents severe